Welcome back into the Cowboys Report. I am Tom Downey. We're focusing in on a bunch of ESPN updates as it relates to the NFL trade deadline and, of course, the Dallas Cowboys as well. Some intel on what and who the Cowboys might be after to help out the defense in particular. ESPN also listed the top 25 trade candidates, linking several to Dallas. Some of which I like, some I don't. Others not linked I think should have been linked. We'll break it all down for you on today's show. We will keep you covered with everything going on around the Dallas Cowboys when it comes to trades. Apologies for sounding like crap, a bit under the weather. But we got videos for you each and every single day, multiple times per day here on the Cowboys Report. So don't miss out. Hit that sub button right now. Let's begin with what Adam Schefter said on his podcast very recently, saying, I would say the Cowboys are having conversations about moves they can make before the trade deadline to improve their defense, just like Jerry Jones said once they traded Micah Parsons. I'm not telling you that they'll be able to pull anything off, but I will not be surprised if we hear Dallas at the very least inquiring about the availability of various defensive players and ultimately trading for one before the Tuesday, November 4th trade deadline. Schefter saying that on Tuesday, and then the Max Crosby stuff all came out afterward. Look, this is the bare minimum of what they should be doing. You should be having the internal conversations and checking in on what the asking price is across the NFL. That literally is the general manager's job. That is the job of the GM to find avenues to make this team better. Short term and long term. That is what they should be doing. Now, as part of an insider piece today for ESPN, Jeremy Fowler had this to say on the Cowboys. My understanding of the situation is the Cowboys are on the hunt for an impact defensive player and have reached out to teams throughout the league, likely to all of them, to gauge interest with a number of players, Max Crosby presumably being one. So yeah, I think there's interest. My sense is that Dallas would be pretty surprised if the Raiders actually moved on from Crosby, with whom owner Mark Davis has a deep affection for. If that is what the Cowboys are doing, that's smart. That's what they should be doing. And also, not telling everybody that's what you're doing. I do wonder if over the last year or so, have the Cowboys kind of finally figured out how to do this shit? Have they finally figured out how to not tell everybody what they're doing on the trade market and publicly say they're not going to call you, but behind the scenes actually do make some of those calls? Because that is what they did with Micah Parsons. Now, I don't think Max Crosby is going to get dealt. Never really felt that way, as fun as it would be. But maybe they're actually doing things better for once. So what is your confidence level in the Cowboys when it comes to trades? Scale it 1 to 10 in the comments section of today's show. Let me know in the comments right now. Coming up, we'll have ESPN's 6 trade targets that they mentioned. They did 25 in total. There are several players on there I think should be mentioned for the Cowboys because I don't agree with all of the actual 6 that ESPN mentioned, including the first name, and the number you'll see listed here is where they ranked on that ESPN trade deadline candidate list of basically on the most value, was Mark Andrews, the tight end. Why? Why would the Cowboys go get a not cheap tight end who isn't producing very well? He's got 21 catches for 174 yards. Who's not a great blocker. Why? That's an awful start. This makes 0 sense for the Dallas Cowboys. It just does not track for me. I don't know why they would go out and trade for Mark Andrews. The team fits that were mentioned were the Niners. I get that they didn't have Kittle, but he's healthy now. The Eagles, who maybe tight end too, but their defense needs so much help. The Cowboys, honestly, did they put the wrong teams on there? I will not rule it out as a possibility. All right, number 9 overall was Alontae Taylor, the quarterback, which is interesting. I will make note, Jeremy Fowler says the Saints don't want to trade him, but they would consider if they got a strong offer, which, okay, they have other young guys. Quincy Riley's a super fun piece. Taylor has been better this year. He's nickel, inside, outside flexibility guy. He'll get you some sacks, which I think actually does fit decently with what Matt Eberflus does. When he blitzes, he does like to bring the nickel corner, and I think there would actually be a pretty good fit in that mold. I am not opposed at all to pursuing Alontae Taylor, but this falls into okay, what's the cost, though? He's young. He's also going to be due for a contract in the not-too-distant future. He's a pending free agent. I don't know if a rental, because I do question if the Cowboys weren't going to pay Jordan Lewis, why would they pay Alontae Taylor? I do worry that, is a rental nickel the best path for the Cowboys, unless he's a cheap day 3 pick, which I don't know if the Cowboys or if the Saints are going to be willing to make that deal. Today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on Prize Picks, where it is good to be right. It is simple to play. You pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. You get those picks right, and you can cash in. PrizePicks is the only app that offers stacks. You pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. You can go Dak Prescott passing yards and passing TDs more than on both of those. I just did Dak passing TDs on the flex play here, along with more than for CeeDee Lamb receiving yards, Courtland Sutton receiving yards, and Javonte Williams carries more than 15.5 there. This is the flex play, which means if you get one wrong, you can still cash out even if one of your picks misses. It's not the biggest payout. That is the power play, but the flex play gives you the room for error a little bit. So go download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Links in the comments along with the promo code and in the description of today's show. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. The third ESPN trade target for the Cowboys, and was number 11 overall on their list, was linebacker Logan Wilson. And this does intrigue me. He has fallen out of favor with the Cincinnati Bengals. He has essentially been benched down the stretch here, isn't doing as much on third downs. I don't think he's that bad of a third down player, though. He's also a team captain for them, so that's always interesting with how that, dynamic plays out. I think there is the risk that, Logan Wilson is a declining player. He's not what he was in his prime. I think of the names we've mentioned so far and on the ESPN list, I think this is the most viable, intriguing one. I think he's not a liability in coverage. I think he helps you in the run game. I think he's got good instincts. I think there had been some pre-draft interest from the Cowboys side as well. He's not that expensive, and I think he's better than Kenneth Murray. This one does intrigue me, and it's not that expensive. The prorated figure the Cowboys owe and the Bengals save is 5.67, so call it 2.5, whatever. They have him under contract next year if they want at $6.55 million, non-guaranteed. So you can cut him if you wanted to. So I think the Bengals actually would be open to shopping him, unlike Trey Hendrickson. This is one that I would keep my eye on. If you do want to go get a linebacker and not just bank on Overshown helping you out and saving everything, a veteran like Logan Wilson does make sense. Arden Key is next up here. He's number 13 on the ESPN, so I was a little surprised. There's a bit of a fall off as you get further down that list, by the way. Arden Key is going to get you about 6 sacks a year. It's what he did in Tennessee, what he did for Jacksonville at times. Here's my issue with Arden Key, and the next guy we'll get to here in a second. Arden Key is a guy at edge. He's a good number 3 edge. He helps you there. I don't need a guy, a rotational piece at edge. I need the guy. I need a stud who can be a potential double-digit sack player. That is not Arden Key. It hasn't ever been in his career. So name a player who you want to go trade for. Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Number 16 was Arnold Ebiketie, the Falcons edge rusher. Again, this falls way too much into the Arden Key category where their numbers don't even look that different, actually. 6 sacks in 2023 and 2024 for Ebiketie. The Falcons rightfully went out and added multiple edges in round 1 this past year, going out being aggressive with Jalen Walker and James Pierce. He's on the outside looking in. Is he actually better than Dante Fowler? If I'm making a trade for an edge, they got to be better than Dante Fowler. Number 24 is interesting. Christian Harris, the linebacker from the Texans, who at one point looked like one of the better young linebackers in football. That was back in 2023. Had 7 TFL, 7 pass breakups, but he has completely fallen out of favor in Houston. He's not getting on the field at all. I do think he's better than Damone Clark, but again, what am I... My purpose, my goal with these trades? Am I just getting a body? If so, then yes, Christian Harris helps me out there with my linebacker depth. Am I getting an impact starter? I'm not so sure. And I would, if he's a 7th round pick, whatever, but he's also going to be a free agent, so it's the value there is a question mark. Now, those were the 6 names ESPN specifically mentioned as a team fit for the Dallas Cowboys. I think there are several players on this list who should have been mentioned as potential fits for the Cowboys. Number 1 player was Trey Hendrickson, which I'm not surprised he was put on that list. There's a big but, though, because the ranking was based on potential trade value. ESPN Fowler, again, not expecting a trade here at all for Hendrickson. They said the Cowboys, armed with 2 first-rounders in 2026, this is a different article from Fowler, and 7 picks, etc., looked into edge Hendrickson, whom the Bengals don't plan to deal. Expect the Cowboys to get involved in various talks. Look, as I've said before, I don't think the Bengals are going to trade Trey Hendrickson. When they went out and traded for Joe Flacco, I'm like, that's not a team that's going to sell their best defensive player. Then they beat the Steelers on Thursday Night Football. They are alive in the AFC North. There are some other edges I want to get into here on today's show that I think are worth mentioning, and I think it was weird the Cowboys were not mentioned as a fit, frankly. Before that, will the Cowboys actually pull off an impact trade? Y for yes, N for no. Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Breece Hall was number 3 on this list, and it would have been a fit if you weren't getting great play out of Javonte Williams. You can't give up the assets required to make him a backup insurance piece, which we can change our mind, knock on wood, if something bad happens the next 2 games, but I don't think Hall is a fit right now for Dallas. Reek Woolen does intrigue me. I don't know how interested the Cowboys are in a corner because they're going to get back Savone Rebel. They know how much they like their guys. They got Kalen Carson back now on the 53-man roster. He's also a rental, which, again, that's the issue. Number 8 is Jalen Phillips. We've spent a lot of time on him. Of note, Bradley Chubb not included in the ESPN trade candidate list. I think trading Phillips makes more sense for Miami. Chubb's under contract. They don't have to trade him right now if they don't want to. The pressure rates are really intriguing for Jalen Phillips. Not necessarily an elite run defender. That's okay, though. Was on an upward track before getting hurt previously. I think that he gets traded. I bet. My guess is he does get dealt to somebody. We'll see if it's Dallas or not. I would be shocked if he plays 7, 8 games and puts up 5 sacks in those games and kind of starts to capitalize better on some of those rushes. Then number 10 was Jermaine Johnson. There's been some reports that, and we'll go more in-depth on him, I think, in particular, during our live show on Thursday. I have interest here. This was a former first-round pick. We know how much the Cowboys like those types of players. I think he has kind of consistently gotten better. At least was on an upward track before getting hurt last year. The pressure rate's a little bit lower than what I would prefer. The Jets suck. This is not a situation where he's getting a lot of high-end opportunities, high-end chances. I think Jermaine Johnson, who's under contract next year, by the way, is a really intriguing piece for short-term and long-term benefits. So of these 2, I don't think I'm alone in Johnson, but it might not be a full-on, 90% vote. Who would you rather have, JP or JJ? Go vote in the comments of today's show. 2 other names that were on here, and these again kind of fall into some of those other edges. Kingsley Enagbare, which would be funny if the Packers flipped him to you. I think he's a 3rd or 4th edge. I don't need a 3rd or 4th edge. Best safety on that list was Kyle Duggar. The money is the big issue there. He's got a pretty expensive contract this upcoming season, or this season, I should say. But he's better than Donovan Wilson, maybe. He's kind of on a favor, though, in New England. I think the Patriots are going to have to eat some of the money, though, if he does get dealt.